Hey everyone, welcome to another Monday Mastery live at 5. We'll wait for a few minutes while people start logging in and checking in and I'm in a totally different location this week. I haven't done Monday Mastery from my camping trailer in a couple of years, and a couple of things came about, so I just thought I would stay here and broadcast right from the RV park. So, yeah, the table's going to be a little jiggly today, so you'll have to bear with the little jiggly videos. It's warm up here. I had the AC on, and the AC is just too loud to try to broadcast with it going in the background. So I've got the windows open. It's about 84. Hey, Sylvia, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here today. So it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, so to speak, and mid 80s. Hey, Barbara, thanks for joining. Glad to see you're here. And much warmer than I had anticipated, and I think a little warmer than the weatherman forecasted, but we'll take it. And the trees are really starting to pop today. You know, when I come up from Kansas City, you know, we're almost in full bloom in Kansas City, and most of the trees are still bare. The leaves are just really small and just starting to pop out. Hey, Rod, thanks for joining in. Glad you're here. And so, you know, it's just been an interesting. It's been an interesting couple of weeks traveling from Oklahoma to Missouri to back to Michigan and Wisconsin again, and the weather is it's always changing. Fortunately, I think down in Kansas City area and Oklahoma, they're getting a lot of rain. We've got some rain scheduled for later this week, but we'll deal with it. So sorry about that. I guess I can't move around too much. The camera readjusts and gets dark or fades out or whatever it is. So I'll try to stay put and not move too much. So anyway, thanks. Hey Terry, thanks for joining in. I'm glad you're here. And so anyway, it's time to get going. Time to talk about dating and relationships. And I was listening to sorry about that. This is going to be a weird afternoon. With the brightness changing. So anyway, I was listening to an interesting podcast over the last couple of days, and it was a money-based podcast. But one of the things that he brought up that instantly clicked with me is the fact that all of our habits, or how we view, in this particular case, how we view money, but it applies to relationships, is caught, not taught. You know, very, very rarely do we get taught money habits. We pick them up typically from our parents, our friends, or relatives. What we see our the people around us doing, and the same thing happens with dating and relationships. You know, and you know, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, and relationally, and you know, growing up through my early 20s, I thought that was normal. And when you grow up in a dysfunctional family, that's what's normal. So what we have to do, or what's important to do, is to recognize that a lot of our beliefs, a lot of our thoughts, and what we consider as normal comes from a very young age. You know, with all due respect, a lot of it, some of it will come from experience. But our beginning dating, our earliest experiences come from watching our parents, and if you're like me, you came from a broken home, and I say broken. My parents were divorced when I was about, I don't know, 12, maybe 13 years old, and I watched them interact. They were not happy together. And I was thinking about this on my drive in today, that when I was young, in my early teens, I blamed the divorce on my dad. But as I got older and recognized my mom had some responsibility there too. They just didn't communicate well, and there's a little spider crawling on my mic. Anyway, so in watching that dysfunction, I just thought, grew up and started dating and thinking those types of relationships were normal. I look back and I had a lot of dysfunctional relationships. Dating in high school, dating in college, and afterwards. So what we have to do is we have to step back and say, where did our beliefs come from? Why do we believe this? Hey, Teresa, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here today. Where are those core beliefs coming from? We tell ourselves stories, and we have to recognize that the stories we tell ourselves about dating, about relationships, and are not necessarily based in reality. Our perception or our reality is one thing, but the truth, the facts, the it lies somewhere else generally. And what we have to do is step back and again say, where did that story come from? Why do I tell myself this story? And a lot of it, what we have to recognize is that a lot of this, we don't even know we're telling ourselves these stories. I hear stories every day from people reaching out to me, that they're so disgusted with men and with dating, or with women, depending on which gender you are, that they're just giving up. They've had bad experiences. There's a lot of people have told me that they're not lovable. Where does that idea come from? That's something that, that's a story that we're telling ourselves because of some of our past experience, whether it's our parents didn't love us correctly or the way we needed, or relationships didn't go as we had expected. We got dumped, we got broken up with. I don't know how many of you, I gotta stop doing that. Hey, Shar, thanks for joining in. We tell ourselves that we're unlovable, or that we say that the opposite sex is evil or corrupt, or they're cheaters, they're liars, they're high maintenance, they're crazy, they're money hungry, whatever it is. Ladies, I hear, guys, especially when you get to be in your late 50s, 60s, that men are just looking for a purse or a nurse. Now, there's a global belief for you. So, we have to figure out where these stories come from. And when we analyze these stories, or we take a look at these stories, are you a part of that story? Or are you able to separate yourself from that story and look at it like you're reading a book or watching a movie, and just take yourself out of the picture? And Teresa says, or asks, and see, do you think there are men out there that really do not know how to put his wife first instead of others and exes. I mean, doing what the other person wants and not what his wife wants. And just, yeah, my dad was that way. And if you're married, that's going to take some counseling or some therapy, and and that's an interesting question, because my dad was wired that way. Everything came first. His business came first. He came first. His boat came first, and then everything else came after that. And and that was part of what. Hang on just one second here. I'm going to try to brighten this up a little bit and see if I can't. It may be a little too bright, but anyway, but that's part of the reason, a big part of the reason that my parents got a divorce, because she felt neglected. And if you're willing to work on it, if he's willing to work on it, then you have some chance. But if he's not willing to work on it, Teresa, then that's all right. Teresa says, sorry, don't have my glasses on when I'm texting. Yeah, it's all right. I understand. I figured out what the question was. And Rod says, mine too. It was better to be his friend than his son. Yeah, absolutely. And those are hard relationships. And that's when we look at those relationships, it's hard to move past, because a father and a son, you want the ideal relationship. But I I remember when I was working in my dad's bakery, and I was about 15 years old, and he just ripped me a new one in front of the entire crew. And shortly after, I was doing one of my tasks, and one of the girls, the waitresses up front, came back and says, "How do you put up with that?" And I just looked at her and says, "That's the way he is." I saw that as normal, and I'm wondering. I said, "That's just who he is," and I just wrote it off. And rather than look at it and say, yeah, that isn't right. And and at 15, I'm not going to approach my dad and say, "Dad, that just wasn't wrong. That was wrong." And you never did that anyway, because he was always right, and at least in his mind. But those people are hard to deal with. Teresa says, "To me, it would be so easy putting the one you love first." Well, and it depends on your mindset. It depends on the stories that you tell yourself. Teresa, you would be an awesome partner, because you are a loving, giving person. You need to find somebody that's as awesome and loving and giving as you are. And and there are guys out there. And because you and I have talked or messaged each other, I know that you see that potentially as a weakness. And don't look at that as a weakness. Look at that as a strength. And that any guy that is able to win your heart is going to be just such a lucky guy to have somebody that's so doting and so interested in taking care of him. Now, and it depending on the guy, it may take him a little while to warm up to that, because he's not used to being taken care of. Teresa says, "I swear we love so different. I would give everything to have. I would give everything I have, but getting the same thing back hurts when you don't." Well, it does. But you also have to learn to understand that not everybody is going to love the way you do, and it's not always it's not something you always or that you can always take personally. You have to understand that we have different love languages and we speak it differently. And the way you speak your love language proficiently, I always recommend that you find somebody that speaks a similar love language. That way, when you communicate, when you talk, when you're just in doing things together, you just naturally communicate um, on each other's level. And Char says, "Where are they, Rick?" I'm assuming you're talking about the good guys. Well, Char, they're out there, and and we're all different. Uh, there are a variety of different personalities, and we need to find all of these things that match. We need to have our must-haves, none of our deal breakers. Developing intellectual, spiritual, emotional, and physical connections. The love language, speaking similar love languages, and then chemistry. This is a long-term process. And while I don't want to be discouraging to anybody, it just takes time. And I used to, or up until recently, I would sit back and look at friends that are, would get divorced, and within 2 or 3 or 4 years, they'd be in a relationship. And here it's like, what the heck? What am I, chopped liver? And Shar, I'm sure you're feeling somewhat similar, but it does take time when you're looking for that extraordinary relationship. You want to be, you want to be picky. And Teresa says, well, loving with the love of God is the way I love. Yep, absolutely. And Shar says, I tend to be more like Teresa, give, give, give. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you also have to, especially in the early stages of dating, you have to put a limit. You have to set boundaries on where that giving stops. Now, when you decide that you're in a committed relationship, and it's monogamous, and then it's time to you can start giving. But you have, and it wouldn't hurt to have conversations about this. Find out what their love style is. Are they a giving person? Are they quiet, or are they reserved? Do they want to stay to themselves when it comes time to start sharing emotions or feelings? Oh, let me jump. Rod says, I used to be a giver until it drained me. Now I'm better at setting boundaries. There you go, Rod. And he says, and recognizing bottomless pits in other people's personality. Absolutely. And that brings up a great point, because there are people that will just suck the life out of you. They take and take and take emotionally. And I mean, it may not be monetarily, but the emotional baggage that they come with is sorry about that. The emotional baggage they come with is can be horrendous. Teresa says, I don't think you should have to change a man. If he doesn't understand the love of God and how to love others, then that is a big sign on how he would love. Exactly. That's a great point, Teresa, because you shouldn't have to change anybody, and you shouldn't have to change for someone. I was on a thread on on Facebook in a group, and the administrator of the group asked if you should be lax on your deal breakers. And I spoke up and I said, absolutely not, because what the boundaries you set today are the boundaries that you're going to have to live with. And if you're not willing to stand up uh, for what you want right now, he will continue to steamroll you, and you'll continually be giving, and he'll continually be taking. And what it boils down to is it may be okay to overlook some red flags early on, but later on you're going to be upset and you're going to be disappointed with yourself as much as you're going to be disappointed with him. And you can't try to change him, because you're only going to create resentment and anger on his part, and it's only going to come apart down the road. Uh, and you have to figure out what you want in a relationship, and you have to set those boundaries. Now, whether those boundaries are or where those boundaries are, it is totally up to you. That's only you can decide what's right for you. Don't let anybody tell you that you're too picky, or that uh, that you need to lighten up, or whatever it is. You have your boundaries, you have your must-have list, your deal breaker list, and if they don't meet those criteria to begin with, then I guarantee you're not going to be happy down the road. And with all the couples that I've interviewed that have told me they're with their soulmate, or they're in an extraordinary relationship, they've all said the same thing. And that thing is that their mate has brought more to the relationship than they could ever have imagined. And and I know that's hard to believe for some of you, but when you do meet someone that is extraordinary, that's your soulmate, it will be absolutely amazing and so worth the wait. I can't say it any differently. Um, Rod says a net emotional loss of energy, month after month, year after year, is a killer of love, intimacy, and fellowship. Absolutely. And in regards to the love languages, Gary Chapman, Dr. Chapman, talks about the love tank. We each have a love tank, and when you give and you give and you give, and get nothing in return, you don't get filled up. You end up running on empty, and that's draining. It's like a car. When you if the gas tank is empty, you're not going anywhere. And so, and when you come out of a relationship where you've been giving and giving and giving and getting nothing in return, it's going to take you a while to refill your love tank. And Sylvia says, it's hard when you do so much for someone and they don't reciprocate. Eventually it tears you down. That causes resentment in the long run. And that's exactly right. But that's where extraordinary communication, or not even extraordinary communication, it's where being an adult and having adult conversations comes in. Um, you have to be able to share what's on your mind. You have to be able to tell him, "Hey, this is the way I love. This is what I look for in return. I'm doing all of these things, and I would like to see some of these things in return." And it doesn't need to be phrased like that. It may be phrased like, "I appreciate all that you do, but when you do this, this is how I feel." And when you share how you feel, it opens up the conversation to talk about it more. Now, if he puts you down and says, you're just too sensitive, then it's not going to get any better. He's not willing to make an effort. And if he's not willing to make an effort, then it's not worth sticking around. And I contend that that more often than not you can spot these things very early on, before you get married, before you get into a long-term relationship. There will be a certain honeymoon period or a grace period, but within a couple of months he's going to start being who he is. Shar says, I feel like I get lots of empty promises, never come to fruition. Well, and that will happen along the path of dating, Shar. And those are the guys that you can quickly discount and say, yeah, this just isn't working. Um, and Sylvia says, he didn't listen, or maybe you didn't listen. I'm not sure which way you meant that. I'm assuming that he didn't listen, and that's hard. It's hard to deal with. Teresa says, when a man has done something wrong and you bring it up and he points out your wrongs, is he guilty of what you're pointing out? Well, more than likely, but a lot of times when you run into that situation, it is a matter of communication, and that's, I was trying to illustrate, and I wasn't doing a great job of it. But when you bring up an issue, you start with I, and I'll use you, Teresa. I feel disrespected, Teresa, whenever you ignore whenever you ignore me. Or I felt totally disrespected when you made a sarcastic remark to me in public. You start with the I. When you say you do this or you do that, it puts up a wall. Teresa, you never listen to me. You always do this or you always do that. And if Teresa was sensing anything in our conversation, the second conversation, she was probably backing up and saying, "Whoa, well, you do the same thing." So it's always important to start with I. I feel disrespected when you do this, or I feel hurt, I feel neglected. Whatever the emotion is, you start with that and say, when you do this. Because what you start doing is you start saying, me, these are my emotions. And these are the emotions that come on when this happens. And they're not as likely to back up and say, well, you do this and you do that, or and if they do that, then just say, okay, this isn't an argument. I'm just sharing how I felt, and maybe we can talk about it at a better time. I'm not looking to attack you, and I'm not looking to be attacked. And just have an adult just have an adult conversation and be the adult. If it starts getting heated, and say, well, let's take some time out, let's cool off, and let's talk about this later. Teresa says, I'm sorry. No, don't be sorry. And Sylvia says, you tried, I tried, he didn't. Yep. And you know, when you're in those relationships, and you just have to walk away from it and start over. You know, and unfortunately, we've all been there, and for most of us. That's why we're divorced. A couple of us are widowed here, a couple of you are widowed here, but you know, for the most part, you know, this stuff all applies to dating and in the early stages of dating. When you're in the early stages of dating, these are the things, these are the cues, these are the highlights that you need to be looking for and paying attention to. And when you do that, you step miles ahead. And again, it goes back to boundaries. What are your must-haves? What are your deal breakers? If you can't have a civil conversation, or some simple discourse, hey Dorothy, thanks for joining in. Then it's time it's time to move on. When you do find that right person, when you do find that soulmate or your extraordinary relationship, it will be a lot easier to talk to them. Um, and Teresa says, love and wanting to be loved should not be so hard and hurtful. Well, when you're with the right one, it's not. We're all gonna have arguments. We're all gonna have disagreements, even in the best of relationships. But when you're in the wrong relationship, it is brutally hard. Um, Terry says, widowed here and dating now. And see, Terry, this is what I was talking about earlier. Oh, I'm sorry, my dear. I'm gonna pick on you for a while, and this is one of these stories that I tried to allude to early on in the conversation, that dating is crap. Yet I can talk to friends of mine that are in the dating world, and they say, yeah, dating's great. I don't have problems with online dating. Um, I date some really great guys, and it's just they're not the right one. So Terry, I'm going to challenge you to take a look at that statement, and say, and have you take a look at that and say, why do I feel that way, and what are my experiences? Um, Rod says, yes, time will not make it better. Yeah, and hanging around too long just doesn't do anything. Um, Terry says, I just don't know how to do it. Well, and I understand that, Terry. Dating has changed dramatically in the last 20, 25, 30 years. I look at how things have changed. There's texting, there's online dating, there's a number of things. But it's dating in and of itself. The fundamentals haven't changed. As far as I'm concerned, when you date someone, when you meet someone, he should be treating you. He should be a gentleman and treating you like a lady. If he doesn't, then you need to be the adult and just walk away. You say, nope, this isn't for me. Or at the end of the first date, if it didn't go well, you can say, yeah, it was nice. I appreciate the time. I enjoyed getting to meet you, but this isn't. I don't see a relationship coming from this. Or if you get into a second or third or fourth date, and you start watching for the red flags, or you start seeing the good things, but don't let the good things overwhelm the bad things. We get into infatuation and raging hormones early on in dating and in a new relationship, and we tend to say, oh, I can handle that, or we start breaking our own boundaries or violating our own boundaries. And as soon as we start violating our own boundaries, then you're sunk. It's just that simple. You have to set boundaries, and then go from there. And if you can see that he's not the one, there's no point in prolonging the agony. You're going to feel this agony, and he's or this agony is all I can think of right now, and my mind is racing back to the old ABC Wide World of Sports, The Agony of Defeat. And we all feel defeated from time to time in dating. That's part of it. you can't expect to date, just two or three or four people or five people and find your soulmate. This is a long-term process. There's 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 people that you need to date. Um, Dorothy says, I'm enjoying my freedom right now. Well, Dorothy, that's awesome. And there is a time for that. And that's one of the seasons of dating, is just enjoying your freedom, enjoying being single. And I in the 11 years that I was single, uh there were several seasons like that. I said, "Yep, I'm happy on my own," and if I find somebody, great. If I don't, that's okay too. It doesn't mean that I didn't want somebody in my life, but um, it just meant that I wasn't going to settle. And Dorothy, I'm assuming that you aren't going to settle either. It doesn't mean that you can't go out on a date and develop a couple of friendships that you just do things casually. So there's a lot of options there. Terry says, might be nice to find 50 people to date. Well, they're out there. I don't know where you live, but if you live in a really small community, Terry, then start looking outside the community. It might mean you need to drive an hour or two, or and a first date, he should be driving an hour or two to meet you. Um, it's one of those things that again, we try to, and ladies, you are so nice at Salt Lake City. I've been there. That's a nice area, and it's a pretty good size area. So there should be plenty of people to connect with. Terry, since you live in Salt Lake, go to meetup.com and backslash Salt Lake City and see what meetup groups are there. It's a good way to meet singles. Don't go there to date. Just go there to meet singles. Go to different groups. Find singles groups to join in, and go to a couple of events in each group and see what it's like. Not every group is going to be a good fit for you. Hey, there's a ton of them. There's probably 15, 16, 1700 groups in Kansas City, and not every one is a good fit. I've dropped out of several groups just because they're big drinking groups, and I'm not a big drinker. So that would be that's always, and one of the things that I always encourage is to, in your single world, continue to develop a world, or new circles of single friends to do things with. And each circle of friends is going to have a different personality, and you're going to do different things with those groups. And that's going to allow you to meet other people, other singles. And I always say, you may not find the right one, but somebody will introduce you to somebody who'll 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 introduce you to the right one. So Dorothy says, I don't want to have a relationship where someone is set in their ways. It's got to be a two-way relationship with total respect of each other's comfort zone. That's exactly the way. I feel, Rick, and that's awesome. We get. I will give you a bit of a caveat there. My lady friend and I both thought that, yeah, we're very set in our ways, and what we came to find out is that we are set in pretty much similar ways. So you might be surprised, Dorothy, that when you find someone, they're going to have very similar ways to you, and it's just going to it will just mesh. And so don't discount that. And Dorothy says, if I meet someone, fine. If I don't, that's fine too. No hurry here. Awesome. That's when you're in the greatest position to date, because you're dating from a position of power. You're dating, and you can date intentionally. You're not dating out of need um, or oh, what is it? Out of a position of weakness. And Terry says, "I am a member of meetup groups. Awesome. Well, and let's see. COVID kind of messed things up. Well, it did, and I don't know what your rules and restrictions, um, and guidelines are out there, but we the bars and restaurants that my group went to were closed down for about 2 months, and starting, I don't know, it was probably May of last year, we got back into live events, or I chose to take the group back to live events. They were small, admittedly, and they're just now starting to grow. I think this last event we had last week, we had close to 40 people, and it was a fun event, and people are starting to feel comfortable about coming out again. Um, so just take heart there, Terry. They'll start to get back together again soon, I hope. And again, I don't know what your guidelines are out there. So, um, uh, power, but more importantly, stability. Um, well, and I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, power, um, Rod. But yeah, it needs to be your partner needs to be emotionally stable. You need to be emotionally stable. Um, and that brings stability to the relationship. I mean, it's not always rainbows, butterflies, and unicorns, but you're able to work things out. Dorothy says that's my plan to do meetups when I'm ready. Start now. You don't have to be ready to date. Just it's You should always be open to making new friends. I'm in the middle of planting flowers and reupholstering my kitchen counter stools. I now have my own my own power tools. I love it, and yes, I actually know how to use them. But down the road, I'm certainly planning on dating again with caution, of course. Awesome. But again, Dorothy, don't let me do that. Don't just because you're not ready to date doesn't mean you can't go out and be social and continue to develop your circle of single friends. I'm always a big proponent of continuing to expand those circles, meet people, and move on. Teresa says, "I like my freedom, but I also like the closeness of having a man and all that is involved." Absolutely, and it's it is you can have it all. It's just a matter of finding the right guy. Um, let's see, Rod. Rod says you're in a position of power in dating if you're happily alone. Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely. But more importantly, you're stable and are not easily moved from your boundaries. Yeah, that's exactly right. Great observation, Rod. Dorothy says, "Don't wait too long. I'm super. Don't wait too long. I'm super social now." There you go. Uh, yeah, and that's it. It is so important to be social because, that's how you connect. It's how you make friends. It's how you will ultimately meet the right guy or the right woman. It's if you're and I'm not. Please take this the way it's intended. I have people tell me that God will bring them the right one, and they sit at home. Well, how is God going to bring you the right one if you're not seen, if you can't be found? You have to put in some effort, and it takes effort. Dating is dating is not for sissies or wimps. It takes effort. It takes effort, ladies, to get dressed up and do your makeup and all the things that go along, especially with first dates or first meetings. And I never, and I just had a very intense conversation with a couple of people the other day about this very thing. You never or should never do dinner or movies or something intense for the or time consuming, I should say, for the first meeting or for the first date. Do coffee or cocktails. If it goes well, you can turn coffee into lunch, or you can turn cocktails into dinner and a show or a movie. But you never. I highly discourage starting with a dinner, because if you're committing yourself to 2 hours of hell if it doesn't go right. So you have to you I'm so sorry. I don't know if the screen keeps fading in and out, lightening and darkening on your end, but it's making me crazy on my side. Teresa says, so you think some people need more love and attention than others? I feel I need a lot of love. Poor guy. Well, when you find the right one, he will lavish you with the love you need and desire. I love the idea of being in love and all that comes with it. Not the bad stuff, but that. Well, you're going to have some arguments too. You got to accept that. But that is when you should be adult enough to sit and talk without fighting. Absolutely. If you can't communicate without arguing, without fighting, without slamming doors, without I'm not going to say there won't be any tears. I know that's going to happen. Even in my relationship, there are tears, and some of them are mine. So, that's all part of great relationships, though. Dorothy says, I like that I'm independent and that I manage on my own. So when I meet the love of my life, that will be a bonus in my life, and it'll be a bonus in his life too. Don't kid yourself there. I would love to have a serious relationship in hopes that it eventually, in hopes that it's everlasting someday. Awesome. And Terry says, I like the coffee meeting first. One guy suggested a walk around the park and got a bite to eat. Had a great time. I like doing something active. There you go. Well, that's fine. It's just always, and the reason I like coffee or cocktails is because in 15 or 20 minutes, if you can see that this is not a great connection, whether he didn't describe himself properly, or the pictures he used online, or if it's a blind date, and it just doesn't, you just don't feel a connection, or you don't feel the chemistry, or they've got poor hygiene. You can be out in 20 minutes, and you're not committed to a whole evening or a whole afternoon. And Teresa says, so you think it is wrong for a girl to ask a guy out? No, I don't. In today's society, I think it's just fine for the girl to ask the guy out. But the guy has to ultimately reciprocate and say, hey, this was a great date. Can we do this again? Or, ladies, if he asks you out, share that if you had a good time and would like to see him again, share that. Let him know. You have to tell us what's on your mind too. We can't read minds. We and don't play games. Gosh, I've had ladies talk about playing mind games with guys, and don't let's. We're adults here. We should be acting like we're not in high school, like we've long passed high school. No games. Just be honest, be upfront. Sometimes it's difficult, and we have to stretch ourselves, outside our comfort zone. But it's important to be able to share those things with the other person. If it's a great date, tell them that you really enjoyed it and would like to do it again. If it's not a great date, tell them, yeah, thank you so much. It was nice to meet you. I just don't think this is going to be, I just don't think we're a good fit. And move on. And if the other person gets upset then that's on them. And Dorothy says, family is everything to me. The person in my future must be willing to know that my grandkids mean the world to me too. Absolutely. And any guy that's going to try to separate you from your family, or not be a part of your family, is not the guy you want to be with. And you can talk about that early on, and find out what kind of relationship he has with his kids, with his family, and that should be a reasonable indicator. Now, it's not always going to be an accurate indicator, because there are some situations that, like I said, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. I had a very stressed relationship with my mother and my father and my sister. So that's always not a great indicator, but I've got a great relationship with my daughter and her husband and my grandkids. Awesome. If he starts talking about his grandkids and or his kids and then you can kind of get a decent indicator that he's a family man, or that he's going to be close to his family, but he should want to get to know your family as well. And I'm not saying he wants to meet them right away. I think that takes time. You've got to develop a relationship and become committed to that relationship. Be monogamous before you start introducing him or her to the family. And Teresa says, I have a problem being too open, which sucks because I just love to share, but too much is not good. Well, Teresa, learn how to gosh, what's the word? To temper your comments, or to just hold back a little bit. You don't have to tell everybody everything on the first date. Just break them in gradually, and just practice that a little bit. Meet somebody and just don't tell them everything right on the first date. Rod says, I think at this point in life, the perfect match would have to understand we've lived half a lifetime before we met them. Not having to give up those core things. Absolutely. And Rod, you're each going to bring something unique to the relationship. One of the things that I always, people ask me about large age differences, and it's all fun and games in the beginning, but I firmly believe 5 to 7 years one way or another is a great age range, because you have a lot of common history, in that you grew up through certain eras in time. You share common music, you share common world events, common life events, or at similar time frames. So I think the closer in age, the better, and you'll have more commonality, more things to talk about. And you can talk about you talk about class reunions. You can talk, she can talk about her classes, you can talk about your class, your classmates, and but it doesn't mean you have to have lived the same life. That's a great point, Rod. Teresa says, I find it hard of thinking. Man has lived a long time without me, a whole other life, and trying to fit in is hard sometimes. It is. But when you find the right one, it won't be, because he'll be interested in you, and he will want to know all of those things about you. Just don't start too fast. Dorothy says, I asked my husband of 30 years to marry me in the Valentine section of the newspaper, and had the newspaper delivered to his office. So yes, I'm all for asking someone to out on a date. Awesome. You go. Shar says 3/4 of a lifetime, but have to be up for some new adventures. Absolutely. And I, Shar, I'm looking at it the same way as you are. I'm on the downhill slide. Theoretically, it'd be nice to say, yeah, I'm only halfway, but at over 64 years old, I know there's just a limited time left. Fortunately, I have some good genes on both sides of my family. My mother screwed up the curve by dying at 65, but that's another story. Dorothy says, restrain yourself from telling someone too much on the first date. They'll be looking forward to the next date. Absolutely. And it is all a learning process. It's all about getting to know people, but and it's about sharing. If you're doing all your time talking and not doing any listening, they'll get to know a lot about you, but you'll know absolutely nothing about them. And it is, and it's just dribs here and drabs there, and if the conversation is going well, if it's coffee or cocktails, you can extend it. I've had cocktail dates or coffee dates that ran for hours, and they were great. But then there's others that you have a drink and boom, it's I've got other things to do. So, and Teresa says, do you think that when you date a man in a different state, would it be better for you both if you moved where no one knows you to start a new life? No. I think there are possibilities no matter what you do. And you don't have to, I mean, if you choose to move to a new area and create a total new life together, and start new friends, I think that's a bit of a strain. I think if you're with the right person, you'll get to know his friends, he'll get to know your friends, and those are things that you share. You don't necessarily want to get rid of all of your old friends or move away and have to start everything over. You're starting a relationship, and to start a whole new life, I think it just in as I talk about it would be would create additional stress in any relationship. Yeah, I'm sorry about your mom too. Yeah, it's mine passed at 65, and it's hard. And Rod says, as a man, if you divulge a bunch of drama up front, I find myself wondering what's left that you haven't shared. Kind of what's behind door number 2. Well, that can be too, but Rod, what I find when you're with the right person, there's always something new to talk about. It's just it may be a little more mundane. It may not be all exciting all the time, but there's always something new to learn. Learn what her favorite color is. Learn what her favorite flower is. Learn what her middle name and her birth date are, so you can do a background check. I don't know. There's so many other things to find out. In a short period of time, it's difficult to learn about somebody in a lifetime, or you learn about their lifetime in just a short period of time. Dorothy says that's a hard one for me because I have so many grandchildren. Well, Dorothy, you can share about grandkids. You just don't have to share about all 20 of it. I'm just pulling a number out of the air. You don't have to share about all 12 of them. Just dribs and drabs. Teresa says, yeah, but being close to the other's ex is hard. Well, if he moves to where you are, he's going to be near your ex. So, there you go. Dorothy says that would be expecting too much to uproot by moving and start over completely in another state. Well, if you're both starting over in a new state, yes, I agree. But if one of you lives there, if one of you moves to the other state, you're only uprooting one life, and it doesn't mean you're getting rid of anybody, but if you're doing a long distance relationship, something's got to give. And so if it's a great relationship, yeah, one of you will decide that, yeah, I can move. It's not a big deal. Rod says, I'm referring to the tough stuff all at once, up front. Yeah, yeah, I get it. And I used to do that, Rod. And yeah, it would scare some people, but I would just ask, have I scared you away? And but there were some things in my past that I wasn't proud of, but I wanted to share them and to let her know, because there are some lines that people draw, that they won't date somebody that's done this or done that or had this problem or that problem. Terry says, I'm more than willing to move for the right one. There you go. And it's just all a matter of finding the right one. Teresa says, yeah, but if you move, the other person better not be selfish on some things that you ask of him. Well, and that's all part of getting to know that person up front. Teresa, you're on kind of a theme here tonight that the guys are selfish, but the right guy won't be. He's going to be very willing to love you and cherish you and take care of you the way you need to be taken care of. Dorothy says 10 grandsons, 1 granddaughter, and 1 great grandson. Wow. So yeah, you've got a lot to talk about. I only have 2. But I love them to death. So, you're going to talk about your 10, I'm going to talk about my 2. So anyway, it's it's communication, it's connection, it's and I'm going to circle back to what the original topic was of what are the stories that you tell yourself? Are you telling yourself that you're unlovable? Are you telling yourself that dating is crap, Terry? And take yourself out of the picture. If you've had some bad dates, take a look at why were those dates bad, and go from there. And we've got somebody from YouTube here. Let's see. Does depression make someone lose interest in you? The person I was dating, she's depressed. Mateus, I don't know all the details there. Let me. You've got another comment here. Will the interest come back when the depression subsides? That's depression. Is a tough one, and in spite of the fact that you love her, if this is an ongoing problem, an ongoing issue, you have to decide whether this is an issue that you want to deal with for a lifetime, or if it's something that's more than you're willing to deal with. And it doesn't make her a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad person. You just have to set your boundaries. Is that something you're willing to deal with? And then you have to understand that she's going to have good days. She's going to have bad days. And if it's at a breaking point now, I'm not sure that it will get much better if the depression subsides. And it depends on where the depression comes from. Is it an instance of a traumatic experience, a one-time experience, or has this depression been something she's been dealing with for a lifetime? So there's a lot of what ifs there, Matthias, and it's really hard to give you a solid answer there. As a general rule of thumb, you should be dating somebody that's emotionally healthy. And especially if you're emotionally healthy, it's time to reevaluate this relationship. And as much as you may love her, it may be time to move on. And again, it doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that you may not be you may not be capable of dealing with that, with a certain level of depression. I mean, if it's minor depression, yeah, maybe. But if it's deep depression and deep seated and takes lots of counseling, it may not be something that you want to deal with. So, I hate to be the bearer of bad news there, but you have to take a serious look at yourself and say, is this something I want to live with? Because it's part of who she is, and that's a tough call, Matthias. I hope I've given you a little insight there, but it is up to you as to what you're willing to live with. Teresa says, what advice do you give a woman to overcome the hurt that has been caused, and all men aren't out to hurt you? How do you stop being scared and thinking you will be hurt? Well, Teresa, you will be hurt. It's just, but that's, not everybody does it intentionally. Not all guys have evil intentions. You have to be confident in who you are. You have to be confident with the voice in your head that you are a good person and you're capable of loving. You don't have to let the voices of your ex-husband or other guys you've dated be the voice in your head controlling who you think you are, because you're not what they told you are. So you have to get yourself out of that mindset and change change the record that you're hearing, change the movie that you're watching, and number one, not taking a major role in that movie that you're watching. Become a spectator to that movie, and that will go a long way in helping you move past that hurt or the fear of that all guys are out to hurt you. Dorothy says, be confident and true to yourself. Be happy with yourself first, and then the sky's the limit. Love who you are, and who you are first. Then everything else should fall into place with the right person. Absolutely. And Matthias says, on top of that, she's 24 and needs her mom's permission to go out. Her mom is controlling. Yeah, Matthias, I'm sorry. That's it's time to walk away from that relationship. I don't know how old you are, but that's a relationship that's if her mom is in control, and with all due respect, mom may be trying to maybe overly protective or dealing with her daughter's depression to make sure that her daughter isn't emotionally hurt or taken advantage of. So, but Mateus, that doesn't sound like a healthy relationship to me, and it doesn't sound like one that's going to be healthy for you. So, with all due respect, I would move on and find someone that is emotionally healthy and able to and able to make some decisions at I'm assuming you're similar in age, and be able to make some adult decisions on her own. And and Shar points out wisely that mom may be the reason for the depression. And yeah, so with that, we're well over an hour here, and wow, this is just blown by quickly. Thank you all for joining in, and Mateus, it's great to have you with us today. Shar, Dorothy, Teresa, and everybody else that was here, you all have been great. Sylvia and Rod. So thank you for joining in. You all are what make it. Yeah, Mateus says he's 23. Yeah, Mateus, find another relationship. Find a young lady that's healthy and emotionally available, and life will be a lot better for you. Thanks for joining in, everybody. It's time to wrap this up. For those of you who don't know, check out my book, Dating Backward. It's available on Amazon.com as both a paperback and an ebook, and on their Kindle reader, and it's also available on my website, ricksodebeer.com. And if you really want to do some one-on-one, give me a call or send me a message, and we can do some one-on-one coaching, and we can talk about I'm a firm believer that a couple of sessions and I can help you with most any problem and move you forward. And that's all I want to do, is help move you forward and help make your dating life better, more productive, and going in the right direction. I don't want you hanging around on my doorstep, on my on my phone, or on my Zoom forever. I want you to get to do healthy things and move on. So thank you, everybody, for participating. I look forward to being with you next week for another episode of Monday Mastery, live at 5. And have a great and blessed week, everyone. I love you, and thanks for being here.